Hello and welcome to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. My name is Matt Barrios. I'm a husband and dad, researcher and writer and coach, and I am focused entirely on helping explore global perspectives on homes so that you can create your best life at home. That's what we're up to in this, and for that I get to interview people, experts and everyday folks all around the world, from Iran to Copenhagen to the United States and beyond, and I found some very, very fun, interesting insights about home. This is all part of my larger project called Home Life Design Lab. Stick around for the end of the episode and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But what I want to tell you about right now is that I'm very excited to talk about this special guest and chat with Andy, who is with us today. Andy is currently calling from South Carolina. Thank you so much for making the time, and I'm glad the internet can connect us for this interview. And you specialize in safety and security in the home, and I thought that was just like an incredible opportunity to chat with somebody who has put a lot of focus on this topic. And and that's not really an angle that I've explored so far on this podcast and in my research. So I'm very excited to talk to an expert in this. So, one of my first questions I like to ask all of the people that I interview is basically, when it comes to your life at home, what are some of the unique things that you like to do, or important things that are parts of your life that help you really be your best self?
And thank you, Matt, for the opportunity to be here. It's great to talk to you and your Home Life audience. So some of the things that I do at home, like you, being home was kind of redefined during, kind of this little global pandemic that we had. I don't know if you remember that or not. Yeah, and it was oh gosh, now I'm home all the time. And it really, kind of set things in perspective for me as a husband and a father and that sort of stuff. But one of the foundations of our home is making sure that we not only feel safe in our home, but that we are actually safe in our home. I believe that safety is the foundation of happiness. If people don't feel safe, then they can't be really, truly happy, because they're always worried about what's going to happen next, what's the next unexpected thing, that sort of stuff. So honestly, setting ourselves up as a family to really, truly be successful really starts with feeling safe at home. And those are simple steps that you can take to make sure that your house is really just an uninviting home for a burglar. As a matter of fact, your show focuses on making your home inviting for family and friends. I'm going to tell you, make it uninviting for the bad guys.
Exactly. It's like in some cases you want to project very clear anti-hospitality to certain people, whereas you want to be very, very hospitable to other types. So I think that is a funny angle on this that I haven't really thought about. So how did this topic became something that was really important to you, Andy? Like, what was the
Sure. So, I had the realization in high school that was life-changing, that was my safety is my own responsibility. And so a lot of people don't realize that until they get into a very scary situation where they actually feel like their life is on the line. So I'm very unique in the fact that I looked at world circumstances at the time and realized, hey, if something goes wrong, I'm the only person that can get me out of here fast enough. So that was kind of the moment that I realized I don't need to be outsourcing my safety to first responders. I'm not bashing first responders by any means here, but sure. What I'm saying is that we need to take responsibility for what we do, how we act, where we put ourselves, the situations that we create for ourselves. So that was really just this big moment of like, okay, I need to be the one who takes control of this. And so I looked at the world completely differently after that. And so it's been a good road. It's been a hard road, and it's one that I'm going to continue to travel down. That's why I created The Secure Dad. I wanted to tell people what I was doing in my personal life, bring you along in my journey, and whatever you can pick up that works for you and your family, that is wonderful. Not everything that I say is perfect for every single family in America, and I understand that because everybody's unique. Every family is unique. So sure. It's really about seeing what works for you, what works for your family, and how you can own that for yourself and your household.
Mm-hmm. And so you're here to inform people, guide people on what would kind of help them I don't know, find their sweet spot for security and what it looks like for their home, their family life, and so on. That's really cool. Now, I want to also ask, like, so I know you're currently in South Carolina. Is that where you're from originally, or what are the places that you've called home over the course
Sure,
of
I've lived in several places across the Carolinas from North Carolina originally, but the greatest place that I think I have called home has been Charleston, South Carolina. It was recently, voted like the #1 city in America for, vacation or something like that. And it really is truly a wonderful place where I have a lot of great memories as a kid, being in Charleston and seeing all the different things. My dad worked downtown, so we got to go see all this amazing architecture and be a part of this area that is really, really steeped in history from the beginning of America. And so, but we lived in a little brick house on an island off the coast of, Charleston, and we had to drive over bridge to get to the mainland and all that. So just fun times, fun memories being in that place.
That sounds really fun. I've actually never made it.
That's
to Charleston.
wonderful.
Is it like kind of beach? Is it what is it like?
Sure. Okay. So you could go to like Folly Beach and hang out there, and that's a huge, beautiful beach where you see a lot of tourism photos. A lot of TV shows will shoot there, things like that. And so it is like what you kind of expect of a South Carolina beach. It's going to be just miles of the nice sand and the surf and all that. Charleston itself is pretty much built right up to the water. So if you go to the Battery downtown, which is kind of like the big iconic thing where you've seen in movies and all that sort of stuff, the water literally just laps up onto the sidewalk. It's just right there. It's And we have these things called hurricanes that happen, and so these things have stood. These beautiful, beautiful homes that have stood for hundreds of years have lasted through all of these hurricanes and all of this. It's just amazing.
That's wild.
The trees and all of that. It's all there. It's amazing to look at and think about.
That's so cool. Gosh, bringing this back to safety security, like I know a large part of what you're doing is focused on burglary and foiling that. Is there also a layer to it around natural disaster preparedness or something
for sure
like that?
Yeah. It's
would you tell me a little bit more
Sure.
about that?
So with natural disasters, it doesn't matter. Like, so you're out in California, you and your fellow Californians have to worry about wildfires, and things like that. Of course, the wildfires just, made the news not too long ago with how New York City was completely covered in, this Martian landscape all of a sudden. You need to understand what the real threats to your home are. Whether it's going to be an earthquake, whether it's going to be, a fire, or if it's going to be a hurricane, tornado, whatever it is, what are the real threats that your actual home faces? And those are the things that you need to be prepared for. Many of those cases, like with wildfires and hurricanes, there's actually a lot of crossover. Generally, you kind of know that an event is happening. It's not like a tornado where something kind of goes wrong in 30 minutes. I guess maybe technically with a fire you could, but generally there's a problem and it's coming. Yeah. I always encourage people, don't hesitate to evacuate. Doesn't matter what it is. You don't want to be that person who is, car number 100 in that line. You want to be one of the first people out. And if you end up leaving your area for, and you could have stayed, who cares? So,
you went for a joyride.
You stayed in a hotel, you ate at a different place, you met some different people. Wonderful. It's a great story. So I tell people all the time, if you think there's going to be a need for you to evacuate, you want to be one of the first ones out, not one of the last ones. You don't want to have that situation where a firefighter knocks on your door and says you got 10 minutes to get out. You don't want to have to do that. So if you enter into one of those situations, make sure you start packing your bags that has your vital stuff in it, like your medication, clothes, food, clean water, that sort of stuff, so that you can just kind of pick up and go when you need to. Definitely if you're in California where there are areas that are prone to wildfires, I would actually have a go bag that is just stacked, there by your door, that has, your basic 1 to 2 nights supply of stuff, so that if you do get that knock on the door, you can grab that bag plus, your family, grab the car and go, that sort of thing. So just being prepared and knowing what the real threats are will help you really focus your time and energy.
That makes sense. And, listening to you talk, it both sounds like you're so good at helping people be prepared, but it seems like also in this line of work and stuff, you're also having to remind people of things that people would rather not think about, right?
All the time. Yes,
just like I don't want to think about natural disasters. I don't want to think about burglaries.
Right.
Like, don't tell me the risks.
Right.
Like I just want to be carefree in
I
my
know.
life, right? So and yet I do think it is really important that there's going to be some people in the world who are just helping us be prepared, right?
Right.
For what could be, right? So, thinking now on this theme of safety, security, we've kind of like explored this natural disaster side. You also brought up like burglary and all of that. I know that's a big issue here in San Francisco. Car break-ins are very normal.
Oh, yeah.
Building break-ins. We live in a large, like 40 complex building. And I just anticipate that my packages may not arrive.
Oh, yeah.
I just expect
Yeah.
that probably somebody's going to come in on the street, 50% chance it's going to get picked up and taken
Right.
out, right? Like, so that's difficult.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yes, and very annoying and whatever, all the reordering, and people now are used to it or whatever. But yeah, what are the kinds of things that you think about when it comes to theft, burglary, and helping prevent that kind of
Sure. So the biggest thing that you really want to do is make your house look like a less attractive of a target than your neighbors. And I know that sounds kind of cruel when I say that, but it's kind of kind of what we're dealing with. If you live in a condo or you live in a freestanding home, no matter where, I would always suggest that you add exterior lighting to your home. Making sure that your home is lit up will not only help your curb appeal, but it's also going to take away the darkness that's on your property. And if a burglar stands on the street and they see your house that's all lit up and your neighbor's is dark, well, they can definitely get closer to your neighbor's house because they will not be seen. They can get up close to the window. They can get up close to the front door, and they will feel much more emboldened to act on that dark home than they will one that's lit up. Yeah. So a lot of people are surprised when I say that that's one of the things that you should really do to your home, because they're like, oh, Andy, I just would have thought you'd have told me to build a moat and put sharks in the moat, that sort of thing. And, hey, if you want to do that, go for it. But no, really, it's going to help your curb appeal. It's going to help your neighborhood look nicer, that sort of stuff. So, I mean, that's one of the things that you can do. Another thing that you can do is make sure that you understand who your neighbors are. Build that community. Because even in the event of a natural disaster that we were just talking about, your community is going to come together to help get, tree branches off of people's cars and their homes. Maybe somebody has power, another house doesn't, to be able to share those resources. So know who your neighbors are. You don't have to be best friends with, these folks. I get that. But what you do need to understand is that you are part of a greater community. And while I do coach people to have your home in order, also do what you can to make sure that your home is a positive thing in your community, that you and your family are a positive thing in your community. So, add that light to the home, be a positive person in your community, get to know the people who are around you, because also in those situations you can find out, oh, hey, there's a meth lab next door and I don't feel comfortable being here anymore. So then that might be, lease up or out, that sort of thing. So
you're telling me an exact story from my
really?
life right now. That's pretty
crazy.
Oh,
really?
Yeah,
oh, gosh, you live next door to a meth lab?
Oh, we lived downstairs from one. It was directly above us, actually. I've told this story on this podcast before, but just to tell you briefly, we had just found out we were pregnant, and we found out in the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off. The guy up above us had set it off. Come to find out that it was this guy cooking meth in the apartment above us. And we're just like, all right, time to get out of here. It is, we've overstayed our welcome, apparently. I don't know.
Right.
But, so luckily now we're in a much, much better place.
Good. Yeah, I actually had a neighbor who was a drug dealer. And by the time I figured it out, I was living month to month at that point. And I was like, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore. And there was this kind of strange, scary moment when his regional manager showed up. And this black Lincoln car pulls up, and these three guys that look, Ukrainian or something like that, they all get out, and the two guys walk into the home, and the third guy stands at the car, and I'm on my lunch break, and I'm on my way back to work, and the third guy just stares me down until I go back into my apartment, and I'm like, okay, And I just called my boss. I'm like, I'm going to be late from lunch. I'll be back whenever this is done.
That is insane.
And I was like, at that point, I'd made the decision that I was going to leave, but I was like, I can't get out of here fast enough. Yeah.
Oh, for reals. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, you add these situations up, and everybody, I think, has these stories they've collected over time that adds up to, I actually need to make sure I'm in an environment where I feel safe and I feel like I know the neighbors and I can trust them enough, or something like that, or like I want to be in an environment that's not too crazy, a neighborhood that's not too wild, right? So yeah, like I see what you're doing. It seems like it's also a collection of stories that you've backlogged over time that are just convince you actually this is really important to have a secure and safe place, right? I know you've also mentioned that this is something that you do for your families, like you're the secure dad, right? So what do you think is the effect of fostering security in your home for the sake of your family? What benefits does it have for the family?
Sure. I think you can overdo security. You can absolutely overdo it. If you get to the point where you are fostering an environment of paranoia, that is too far.
Totally.
Yeah. So there's a balance, and for every home it's different. For every family, every personality it's different. So the positive sides of security is you're going to teach your family, okay, these are the boundaries that we need to respect in order to be safe for where we are. Obviously, we don't just leave all of the burners on in the gas stove all the time. We don't leave our door unlocked. Believe it or not, Matt, there are so many Ring camera videos that I see of burglars coming up to a home, and the first thing they do is try the doorknob. And a lot of them actually will get in. There was actually one that I saw not long ago. This guy kind of comes up and looks around, and he grabs the doorknob, and it opens by 2 inches. And the dude, he just stands there in shock, and looks around at his accomplices. Is like, really? Okay, let's go. And so they were not expecting that. So just the basic practices of making sure your doors and windows are locked, those sorts of things are all things that you want to pass on to your kids for sure, so that when they go off into the world, they have their first apartment, their first home, they carry on and they share what they learned with you when they lived at home with you. And so it's kind of like setting up a generational understanding of what security is. I know my parents kind of grew up in the age of, we didn't lock our doors at night, everything was fine, and that's okay. Sure. It really wasn't fine. We just didn't have 24-hour news networks and the internet to tell us what's really going on. But that's a big paradigm shift. But I feel like if you do it correctly, it's going to really give you that foundation of happiness, like we talked about earlier.
That sounds good. And I think you twice now you've kind of brought up this idea of so at first you're saying know your neighbors and be prepared so that you can be a positive impact on your neighborhood. Now also you're thinking generationally with your kids and what service will being raised in a really secure, safe environment actually do to help them and their roommates in the future while they're in college and so on and so forth. So I just think that there's actually a mind that you have, which is something that I'm interested in this project, for the impact of things, the ways that things have butterfly effects that we may not necessarily really see, and yet it ends up being having social impact in a positive way, right? So I really love that, and I really care about that a lot in this project. Are there any other things that you're seeing about the way that home and a secure home can positively impact the world?
Sure. There is the mindset of, if I have my home in order and you have your home in order, then we'll just have a bunch of homes that are in order, and that will change your neighborhood. That sort of thing. If I take care of my home, you take care of your home, we're going to be okay. Now, the difference there is what is good for my home is not necessarily good for my neighbors next door, and vice versa. So I also think there's a level of respect that you have to extend to everyone else, and a level of understanding, not to be judgmental of what works in one home doesn't work in your home, that sort of thing. But to still make sure that your home lives up to your standards, but you're still respectful of everybody else. And there's until your standards cross somewhere where, like, you have a neighbor who thinks it's okay to have a meth lab, that sort of thing. That crosses a line. That crosses a boundary.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to not only... This helps your kids understand their personal boundaries that they have for themselves, but the boundaries that other people set up for them, for themselves, and to be able to see those and to understand those better. And when you can teach your kids how to understand interpersonal boundaries and boundaries at work, at home, on your commute, whatever it is, the better off they're going to be.
That is so good, and I love the note of cultivating respect for the way that those things are going to be different from one another.
Right.
And I think that's really valuable to be able to individualize, treat people with like, oh, you have your own way of thinking about things, and sometimes that will cross an objective line that is breaking the law and doing harm to people, and so on and so forth. And we got to, deal with that in do right legal ways. But other times, it is just a matter of preference, it turns out, based on personality or values or what have you. That's really interesting. So now I love this conversation about safety and security. Now I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your home and the way that you run it. So when your home is going really, really well, what are some of the things that are happening in your home?
I think for one of the things that happens when our home is running well is everybody is on the same page. Like, we are all doing what needs to be done. That means, like, hey, we're taking care of the yard. We are, working on a project in the house together. Maybe it's just that we do a deep cleaning before family comes over, those sorts of things. When everybody is working together, that creates a harmony. And when there is a shift in that, that's when things can kind of go wrong. When everybody's working the same way, and things are off, whether, good or bad, or it's something that's your fault or not your fault, that's when you can do the thing of, oh man, I forgot to close the garage door last night. That can be the, oh man, I've left the front door unlocked, or this window stayed open all night. Those sorts of things are going to happen. But when that harmony is disrupted, when, people are not really focused on their home and their what's going on, that's when those little things can happen. And my last name is Murphy, and Murphy's law is whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So I understand that as long as I am disciplined in how I protect my home, then if I make one little mistake, it'll still be okay. And that's going to be there, is how you set up your home to be successful when it comes to security. And that is teaching your kids, when they run out into the backyard, close the door behind them. That sort of thing. When they come in from playing, lock the door behind them, that sort of thing. My son has actually locked me in our backyard several times. We actually have a doorbell on the backyard, the back door, because he's just in the habit of locking the door when he comes back into the home. And I have never once been mad at him for locking me out of the house. I will just ring the doorbell, and I'll wait for him to come back and get me. And it's one of these crazy doorbells that has all these like random sounds and stuff like that. So I never know when I hit the button if it's going to be a rooster crowing or if it's going to be a horse neighing or whatever it's going to be. So so it's just in those moments where things get a little off kilter, that's when things can go wrong. But if you've set up a good discipline in your home, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but just in a positive way, that everybody's working on the same stuff, you'll be fine.
I think that's such an interesting point, that like there's a unified goal within the family and how it's functioning in the home, like cleaning together, enjoying life together, whatever it might be, hosting together. When there's a unification of like, we're doing this thing together, right? Like that sense of harmony that comes through, that I know that really rings true for me. I'm flashing back to our Saturdays, my dad putting on a Phil Collins record on on the stereo, and it's like the house time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes. You familiar with this?
I am. Yeah. You said Phil Collins. I was like, man, yeah, like the album with In the Air Tonight. It's funny, like when I hear songs, and I've actually been on a Phil Collins kick here of late, which is funny. I can actually see the album spinning on the turntable, because that's when I heard the songs the first time was on a record player. So yeah, man, I've been there. That is awesome.
You know full well. Yeah, exactly. And I think when I was a kid, those times were so annoying. And I'm like, why are we listening to this
Yes.
music? And
Yeah.
why do we have to clean the house again? And so on and so forth. But now I can look back on it with like quite a bit of gratitude and you know, it's a fun story to tell. And when we get together as a family, we reminisce about all the different albums that we listened to when it was clean the house time. And I think there's just a positive opportunity for especially families living in a home together and doing all the projects about keeping the home together and preparing to host people and everything that can also be such a groundwork for positive memories. So yeah, I'm just like jiving with you on that point.
Oh,
of,
yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
It is such an example of when life's going pretty well. Now, when home is also, you know, going sideways, right? Like, what does that look like, feel like for you? Because that inevitably happens for all of us. But
Right.
what does that look like for you?
It kind of looks like usually there's an absence of a person. Because my wife has had to step in and take care of her parents, you know, here of late. And so unexpectedly, she'll just be gone for a day or two to take care of, you know, whatever's going on. So I know that as a dad, I'm perfectly capable of running this house, you know, on my own, that sort of thing. So that's a really cool thing to have between two parents, is knowing that, yeah, okay, one of us is going to be gone for a little while. That is going to get something sideways, but we still have our basics of who we are, what we represent, and what we're going to do. So, like, I know that if I'm away for traveling for work or something like that, that my front door is locked because my wife knows to do that. My son knows to do that. That even in those times where things do get off kilter, those basic core principles that we've set up as a family are still there. And so that's one of the things, man, when you can have confidence in your family that they're going to do those sorts of things, that's an amazing thing. And of course, as humans, we're going to make mistakes here and there. But yeah, just when things start to go sideways, a way to bring things back to center is to focus on what you do and what you do well. And that can be securing your home, making sure that your kids are getting their homework done, establishing that routine as much as possible as you can when things just really kind of seem alien.
Gosh, Andy, that sounds very helpful to have roles that are connected to routines. That's a valuable insight there. Because I know for me and our family, both me and my wife, are personality-wise slightly more non-routine types, so a little more free-spirited, you know, go with the flow, what have you. And it's been a challenge, like having a kid and realizing, oh, kids really do thrive on routine. And
Yes, they do. Yeah,
we've got to figure out how to do that. And but I think what you're adding to this layer, the layer you're adding to this, is the idea of we have our different roles in the routines as well.
Yeah,
which
right.
is really helpful to hear. And I think that applied to us. Like, you know, I'm head chef of our house, right? Like, I love, like, cooking's like my sweet spot, you know?
Awesome. Good.
And it sounds like you're a security expert of the house.
Right. That's what I do. And thankfully, I do not have cooking skills. That is not my sweet spot.
Sure.
I mean, I can hold it down. You know, I can do stuff, but yeah, my wife that is her thing. She loves to do that.
That's awesome.
She's very good at it, which is why I'm overweight.
Me too, and I do it to myself actually. So, oh man, I love it. Well, okay, so we've covered some awesome ground here in this interview. You know, another question that I like to ask people is, what are maybe the daily, weekly, monthly rhythms that you keep in your home that help set it up? So you already kind of alluded to this with like kind of having this disciplined routine thing, but what are those like daily, monthly, weekly things?
Sure. So a lot of times, you know, like going to the grocery store is a big thing. You know, we live in a place where we go to the grocery store, you know, once every 7 to 10 days. Or other people, they're at the store, they're at the market every day to buy whatever they need, that sort of thing. Right. So I know that if we're going to go out and make sure that, you know, we've got our meal plan taken care of and we're going to go get what we need, I'm trying to plan those outings at the best time for our family, meaning that we're hopefully not going to go out in the middle of a thunderstorm, or we're not going to go out in the middle of bad traffic, or I'll hop on Twitter and take a look. Oh, is there a riot this week? You know, what is it that's going on? Yeah. So that rhythm of what we're doing, going to the store, taking care of whatever, isn't going to be affected greatly by something that I could help mitigate. that sort of thing. I kind of, like yesterday, we kind of got caught off guard doing some stuff and ended up in some pretty bad storms, my son and I. And so we actually had to get off the interstate for a little while, that sort of thing, and having a plan to be able to do that. So, and that yesterday kind of did go sideways. So it's funny that we're talking about it now. Yeah. But just being able to say, okay, so here's our plan, here's our rhythm, and being able to be flexible enough to say, okay, we're going to have to do it a little bit differently this week. We're going to have to do it a little bit differently this month. Going back to that whole little pandemic thing we had, just a little while ago, that I think really helped a lot of us be able to understand how to pivot and how to be able to say, okay, this is my normal rhythm of life. It's going to be a little different now. And so now, once this is done, once this is over, how do I go back to where it was, that sort of thing. But just to make sure that what my plan is, I can actually execute in the environment, that sort of thing, to make sure that everything's going to be cool, that I'm going to, not stumble onto, protesters blocking the interstate, that sort of thing, if I can help, that sort of stuff. So that's the things, that's how I help keep my family rhythm going from week to week, month to month.
Okay, yeah. So I hear a lot of paying attention to the different things that a person might need a contingency plan for, right? Like it's weather, politics, protests, and so on, right? Like all those things. Like actually, you try to keep your finger on the pulse of that as you go through your normal life, getting groceries and so on. So that's a very unique thing, I think, that it's certainly not the way that I think about things, but different strokes for different folks, but it is it seems very helpful actually to have that level of mindfulness of it all. Yeah, that's great. So as we're kind of getting to some closing motions in this interview, which I've just so enjoyed, Andy. So thank you for being part of it. You've been answering these questions, talking about security, talking about family life, talking about all this stuff. So even just thinking about this interview and maybe your preparation for it, do you have any recommendations for people for how they could have a really secure home?
Sure. So one of the things that I really tell people to understand, and you kind of alluded to this a little while ago, and that is understanding that you can be the victim of a crime. As scary as that is, as much as you really don't want to think about that, I understand it. Yeah. Even me, I've written a book on home security. I have a podcast about home security and all these sorts of things. Yeah. Somebody could try to break into my house tonight. Now, I'm trying to do everything I can to mitigate that, but that doesn't make me not susceptible to those sorts of things. Right. So even I look at this and say, you know what, I could be the victim of a burglary, I could be the victim of a phone scam or, an email, a phishing scam, that sort of stuff. Right. So to understand, okay, I'm vulnerable. These sorts of things can happen to me. Take a deep breath. Now that I know that, what's the reality? What's the reality of what could potentially happen here? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about, a plane falling out of the sky and hitting my house, that sort of thing. But I am concerned. I'm one of those people that when I leave my home, I'm like, man, did I turn the oven off? I didn't use the oven today, but what if I had randomly turned it on? Mm-hmm. Those sorts of things. Yeah. So it's understanding what that real threat is. And so for you in your neighborhood, you might have problems with people stealing packages off your porch, that sort of thing, like you were talking about. Yeah. For that, I would say, hey, why don't you consider getting a P.O. box somewhere and just having your packages delivered there? I know it's really inconvenient to have to go out of your way to pick it up, that sort of thing. Yeah. But that's an alternative that you could use, that sort of thing. Yeah. Another way that you can help make your home safer is to know what you are capable of. I will fully admit, one night right before I really started getting serious with starting the Secure Dad, I was sitting in bed looking up at the ceiling fan and said to myself, if somebody were to break into our house right now, I don't know what I would do. And that's a big moment, especially for a man, a husband, and a father. Gosh, what would I do? Because that kind of falls on me. That's my role in our family. Sure. And so it was like, okay. So I started thinking about it. Okay, well, how would I keep somebody out of my bedroom? How would I keep them off the second floor of my home? How would I keep them from getting through my door? How do I keep them off of my property? And I would just kind of work it on out until I can say, okay, well, if somebody's standing on the street, my house looks like an unappealing target. So they never get to the door, they never get up the stairs, they never get to the bedroom, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really understanding how vulnerable you are, what you're capable of, what you're not capable of, and understanding even in your capabilities. Like I say this of people who are martial artists all the time. I love martial arts, think it's fantastic. But a lot of people think that they can just punch and kick their way out of every problem, where the real thing would have just been, okay, let me walk away from this. That sort of thing in a confrontation. I know that's not necessarily home security, but understanding what you are capable of, what you want to do in these sorts of situations, and of course, trying to avoid the horrific scenario that somebody is in your home at night, because chances are if somebody's in your home at night, they want you, not your stuff. So that's the thing that you work on trying to avoid. You identify that threat, you identify that problem, and then you take a look at your home and you say, this is something I actually want all your listeners to do tonight, is if it's okay, go stand outside your home at night and then again in the day and say, if I were a burglar, how would I break into my home? How would I do this? Can I jump the back fence? Oh gosh, I left the garage door open. Somebody could just easily walk in and take stuff out of the garage. Did I lock the door between the garage and the house? That sort of thing. And you'll start to see what the bad guys think. And believe it or not, like I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. Well, architecture, is drastically different from where you are to where I am. The way that the common criminal thinks is not that different from zip code to zip code. They're going to be looking for the same sort of stuff because it's human behavior. It's part of human behavior. So when you understand that bad guy is a human that's going to use their human brain to think about how they would break into your home, you can kind of take some of that power away from them by saying, okay, if I were a bad guy, how would I break into my home? And then you fix those problems that you find, and that will really put you ahead.
That's great. Gosh, yeah. It seems like a very helpful perspective to kind of put yourself in their shoes, and what would be the weaknesses that would be exploited if somebody were to try to break in and all that, and what can you do to cover that, right? Make sure that it's not setting yourself up to be a victim of that crime. And I would hope that nothing happens to anybody, but the reality is that things do happen to people, sadly, and it's better to try to make sure that it doesn't happen than not. So, okay. Well, Andy, thank you so much. For people who are interested in getting in touch with you, hearing more about your project and, how they could be coached by you, hear about your podcast, so on, like, how could people get in touch with you?
Sure, absolutely. You can go and check out thesecuredad.com. There's a ton of resources on there. My home security book is there. You can check that out if you want to. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and the username for both is thesecuredad. But for your listeners, what I think they might really benefit from is I have an absolutely free guide. It's a quick reference guide to home security. It's about quick wins that you can do right now, tonight, with investing very little money to make your home a harder target than it was. So if you go to thesecuredad.com/tools, you'll see that home security quick reference there. It's a PDF guide, and I will send it to you for free, no strings attached.
That's awesome. Thank you, Andy. And I hope people do take you up on that offer. I will make sure to gather, those social handles, those websites, URLs, and everything. I'm going to put them in a link in the show notes on the companion blog piece to this interview. So if you're listening, you're like, I want to follow up with this, then please just click on that blog post. You will find all the info in one place gathered there. So thank you, Andy, for an amazing interview and coming on as an expert in home security. It was a really valuable conversation.
Thank you, Matt. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. Please take a moment to rate it, like it, and subscribe wherever you have listened or watched. If you really loved it, check the link in the show notes to become a premium subscriber to support the ongoing work of this project and to unlock some exclusive premium episodes. Home Life for Extraordinary Impact is a project of Home Life Design Lab. Find out more at homelifedesignlab.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter and follow along on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.